A couple weeks ago, I posted a video on how to handle uncertainty and financial uncertainty in your business. So this video is being posted in Q2 of 2025, and there's been a lot of volatility in both the public markets and in the small business markets. And a lot of small business owners are a little worried about their future. So that they have been experiencing decreased demand, increased costs with potential tariffs or maybe potential tariffs. So with all of that, there is just some uncertainty and some sense that maybe the future is not going to be what we thought it was going to be. So I did that video a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that I made a recommendation to do was to do scenario planning. And what I realized is that maybe not everybody knows how to do scenario planning. And so what this video today is going to be about is to show you an example of how to do scenario planning for the next year, basically, on a business. So I have an example business here, and it's in a cash flow forecasting spreadsheet. And I'm going to talk you through different scenarios and how you could potentially think about, if this, then that, if this, then that, because that's really all the scenario is. If this happens, then what do we need to do? Okay, and so what we want to do is give you a sense of your financial parameters and what can you do if you lose some revenue? What actions will you need to take if your income is not as high as you thought it was going to be? All of this is to help you make better, more informed decisions, to help you feel more clear about actions that you need to take, and ultimately help you sleep better at night as a small business owner, because these times can be pretty upsetting, and they can also keep us all up and could create a lot of concern and anxiety. So this video is really about helping you with that. So why me? I am a fractional CFO. I am a small business CFO. I run a CFO agency specifically to help small businesses with this type of thing. And this is what we've been doing with clients recently. It's been, hey, we just got word that we lost a contract that we thought we were going to get. So how does that affect our financial plan for the next year? Or, hey, new contracts are just not coming in as fast as possible. What's the lowest possible revenue amount we can make in order to make all of our ends meet? So what we've been doing is we've been helping clients try to figure out, which strings they need to pull and how they can do it more as proactively as possible so that they don't get into a financial desperate time, so that we don't get too low in our cash reserves. And so this is literally what I've been doing over the past couple weeks. And so I thought, hey, if we've been doing it for some businesses, my guess is that other businesses should probably be doing it as well, okay? We are a fractional CFO agency. Clara CFO Group is a fractional CFO agency. We serve specifically B2B service companies who are looking to grow and to do that in a financially sustainable manner. So if you are like, hey, I don't want to do this ourselves, I really want some help, please feel free to reach out to us at claracfo.com. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get into this example. I'm going to do a screen share. What I'm about to show you is our cash flow forecasting worksheet that's been pre-filled with a budget for a client and basically a made-up scenario. This cash flow forecasting worksheet has been downloaded over 10,000 times on our website, so we'll make sure to link it in the spreadsheet below. You can do scenario planning in a cash flow format. The good thing here is that we can see the beginning cash balance and the ending cash balance, because I'm going to say that is kind of what's pretty important right now, is to make sure we're maintaining a certain amount of cash and understanding when we're going to have cash dips. But you can also do this in a profit and loss form. So if you've created a budget that's more in a P&L type format, you can do this in that format as well. My big thing is I think you should do it where you can see month, like every month. You can see it month by month, not just in an annualized plan, but you want to do this month by month, because you might be having changes happen very quickly, like maybe they're happening in June, and you want to make sure to put that in the right timing, not just in an annual format, if that makes sense. This cash flow spreadsheet, it's available for free. If you want to use that, I'll put some links in the description box below to also how to create a cash flow forecast and also how to create a budget, because if you don't have a financial plan for the next foreseeable future of your business, then you're not going to be able to do scenario planning. You need to have a plan to then modify in different scenarios. So if you don't have a plan, then of course you're going to be stressed out because you're like, I have no idea what was going to happen anyway, and now you throw uncertainty on there, and now I'm just panicking. So we don't want that for you. We want you to have a financial plan and then use that to kind of modify and start to pull those levers to say, if this, then that, okay? I'm gonna hop in to the spreadsheet and let's look at this scenario here. Okay, here's the spreadsheet and just a brief high level of what this spreadsheet is. It's a cash flow forecast. So we start with the beginning cash flow up at the top, and I've just put this for a 12-month from May 2025 through April 2026. And we have cash in sources. This is gonna be our income sources. And then we have cash out sources. This is basically coming from our budget. So this has been pre-populated here. And then other cash out scenarios like loan repayments, tax payments, and then an owner's draw, and then any cash in. Like if we need to borrow from a line of credit, we could put that in here, okay? And then what I have here down at the bottom is cash at the end of the period. So we're gonna be ending with April 2026. Cash at the end of April 2026 is what that is. And then here, I also have this set so that if cash goes below $75,000, these numbers will turn red to kind of indicate like, hey, we're kind of getting into a danger zone. $75,000 is an arbitrary number that I've set for this scenario because in worst case scenario, we would need about $75,000 to sort of shut the business down. So I've just kind of put that in here as a placeholder number. You can decide what that number is for you. And then the way that I have this, I have two linking spreadsheets here. One is going to be our clients, and this number is going to feed into our cash flow forecast retainer income here. And then one is going to be for employee costs. So these are individual employees and then their salary across the year, fully loaded with taxes and benefits, okay? Let's just say that everything's looking fine right now. You actually, like this is the scenario and you are not really concerned about any of your clients currently, and you're thinking like this is, looking like a good plan. But then you get a call from a client that says, hey, we just lost our biggest client and we are gonna have to lay off all of our people. So, or maybe 75% of our people. And that might be for you a fairly large client. So we're gonna call that Engine. And Engine has said after June 30th, we cannot fulfill our contract. Our business is basically over. So you thought everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden you lose a client. So I'm gonna take that out of the scenario starting in June 2025. Maybe their bill for May is already on the way. They're not gonna pay you anymore after June. So in that scenario, we just went down from 125 per month to 106 per month. And then you'll see that rolls into the cash flow forecast. So how does that affect us? You'll see pretty quickly, actually, that we're starting to get a net negative change every single month in our financials. So that actually really did impact us quite significantly. And very quickly, we went from being in a fairly healthy cash flow amount where we're kind of breaking even and it was all fine, to all of a sudden, we are now below our safe cash number, and then we would be in a loss position by next year. So the first thing I would be looking at here is there any costs associated directly with that contract that we could cut? So I have identified, actually, we did have some direct costs, and it was $1,000 for that contract that we will no longer have. And then we might be able to go in here and look and say, actually, some of our subcontractors were related to that as well. So maybe we go in here and we say, like, you would obviously need to know what these are. This is a hypothetical scenario. So let's take these down to maybe it was about $2,500 per month that we were paying in services. Okay, so that helped us a little bit, got us a little bit further along, but we still got us about 1 month further where we don't go below our safe cash number, but that's not changing anything dramatically for us. If we can't get a new client, so we could say, hey, with that much loss, we really need to go out and get a new client. But with the environment being what it is, and there being a lot of uncertainty, we're not thinking we're gonna get a huge client here. We're gonna try to get something close to maybe our lowest retainer that we have, or maybe here, 50,000. We're going to just try to get something to fill in, and we can probably get somebody on by July. This is like a scenario. Okay, so with that, you can go and you can see, okay, this is what revenue looks like. And, you know, at least with that very minimal amount, at least we have some money at the end of the year. We are not in our safe zone by any means, but we have a little bit of money. But I would look at what else we can do to potentially cut costs. Like, let's just say you've exhausted your potential here and you're like, there's no way we're going to get new business. Nobody is saying yes to anything. You continue your business development efforts and hope for other work, and you're doing your best effort because, like that video that I showed you before, you still need to focus on sales activities even when it feels like nobody's buying. You still need to go out and do that. But if this was the case, you might maybe not get any more clients. Let's say the next shoe drops and your largest client, Monsters Inc., notifies you that as of August, they are going to be cutting their retainer in half. So they're cutting their retainer in half. Your monthly revenue has just dropped to $100,000. And then in that scenario, you know, you're going to have to do some other things. It's because you are now in a significant negative. What this does for us is it says, okay, I think we need to look at other expenses. You might decide to drop conferences this year because maybe you just kind of are thinking this is not how you need to be marketing right now. And then maybe you change your marketing expenses to be closer to just like relationship networking. So you're doing like some meals and whatnot, but you're not doing any kind of like outward facing, you know, ad buys or anything like that. And then maybe you're able to trim down subcontractors a little bit more to where you can keep this lower at like no more than $2,500 per month. Okay, so you're making adjustments based on what you know you can. So in this case, because we saved a good amount of money between the conferences and then cutting down some of the additional subcontractor labor, we are in a positive cash position at the end of the year, but we're still kind of not in that safe place. So what we might need to look at this point in time is to look at potentially some employee costs. So you look at your team, you determine who was the most affected by losing those clients, who's maybe not performing well anyway, who is the person that, you know, does need to go. And maybe you realize that, you know, for example, it's Kevin. And so we can take, you know, Kevin out. You might need to provide him with a severance. So let's put that in here. Let's say it's 3 months of severance. And so with that, we do have a cost associated with letting him go, but we're not having that ongoing expense as well. So we're in a slightly different position here. So that's kind of gives you a sense of like how this could work. And so you look to see like what strings can we pull to make this more favorable. So you might also then go back to your employees and say, hey, well, we actually need to look at maybe our admin staff needs to be decreased because for whatever reason, you know, we are just, you know, not needing as much admin staff because there's just not as much happening in the office. So let's say that's Jan here. Let's change Jan's amount to maybe going part-time with Jan. Maybe she's willing to continue working part-time to preserve her job, and maybe she would like to be spending some time doing another job or doing something else altogether. And she's happy to stay on and she's not disgruntled about it, but we put her at halftime. So if that's the case, we can go back here and see like, yes, our payroll cost has decreased and we're actually all of a sudden back in a better position because we have reduced our operating costs well enough with making some staff adjustments. Now, staff adjustments are never the thing that I try to go to first, but they are one of the things that can make the biggest difference when you talk about looking at long-term costs over time. Now, let's say that you get to a position where all clients are struggling and you need to, you know, get a sense of like, what if we lose another 20% of business? And maybe you don't really know where it's going to come from right now. I have this set up right now that if I have a 20% reduction in revenue it will calculate that for me. So it's not specifically identifying it like where it's coming from, but if we have a 20% reduction here, what happens? So if we lose a couple more clients, if we lose contracts just need to be reduced, what happens? And so this is where we see like, oh yikes, like that's gonna start hurting us right away, and we're gonna be way in the negative. So what we could look at here is we might look at, okay, well, let's do some kind of austerity measures as much as we possibly can on our office expenses and get these down to like just what we can, like between rent and like very essential expenses. So maybe that's $5,000. There's nothing extra. This is no extra, Post-it notes and pens. This is just exactly what we need to operate the business. And we're cutting out travel. Let's cut out travel. That's ridiculous. Oh, rent is here. So maybe we can cut out a little bit more out of our office expense budget here. And, this means like really communicating with the entire team, like, hey, we need to pull in their austerity measures. We're trying to protect jobs as much as possible, and the way to do that is to cut the other expenses. But sometimes you can't cut other expenses enough to potentially protect payroll. I'm always of the mind of like, try to protect payroll as much as possible, as long as like your team is really great. If you already had some strugglers that you probably should have let go anyway, it might make sense to do that. But it's really hard to find really great team members, and then also very expensive to retrain team members. So I try to hold on to team members as best as possible. And, it's very difficult to let people go and let them go in the middle of a recession. So the heart in me is always like, try to preserve payroll if all possible. We're going to cut out subcontractor costs because, we're going to move all of that work that subcontractors were doing to our internal team because we've had a reduction in workload. So we're going to just figure out how to do it ourselves. So even with that, with those big changes, we are still not in a healthy cash position, and we'd be in a loss by the end of the year. So this is where we would say, hey, we kind of need to go back and look at our team members again. We might be able to get by with a couple people going part-time. So maybe for Angela, for example, we can get a part-time position, and then Michael is also willing to take a part-time position. I'm just putting them both at half-time to see how that could affect us. Even with those people going part-time, we're still not in that healthy cash position, but at least we're not in the negative. So this might be something that we could then say, we're okay for the next couple months going into a $50,000 of cash. It's not my favorite, but maybe we're okay because maybe by the end of 2025, there'll be some increased demand again, and we can start to gain new clients again. And we don't want to let our team members completely go. In that scenario, you could say, we could, if we needed to, we could always borrow from a line of credit, especially if we wanted to, maybe closer to the end of the year or the beginning of the year next year. What happens if we infuse some cash into the business? We don't need it yet, but this is what it would look like if you did that. You could also look at things like owner's draw. So the owner might say like, hey, if I'm taking, money away from staff and having them go part-time, maybe I need to look at my own personal expenses and reduce my income as well. And that almost gets us to, we're kind of just below that cash number. So these are the things that we can start to play with. We can't really change our loan repayment amount. We can't really change our tax savings. We can change our owner's draw. We can change our marketing expenses, our software expenses, our operating expenses in general. Some things are really hard to change, like a rent amount. You're probably locked into a lease. It's not easy to get out of a lease. So you need to think about which levers you're going to be able to pull to actually show you and to be able to get you to a result that's going to work for you. I realize that not all businesses are this easy to forecast because I have very clear retainer income here, and I've simplified the version for the purposes of illustration here. Hopefully you get the point of what do you do when something happens? What do you do if 50% of your income comes in? If 50% of your income comes in, then you have to make some drastic changes. Then you're eliminating all positions in a certain department, potentially. And even then, that could not be enough. So you might need to go deeper, cut deeper. And this is where you also can talk about your risk tolerance as a business owner. And this is a really good time to talk about it. How far are you willing to go by borrowing from a line of credit? How far are you willing to go by using your own cash reserves that you've built up in your business? How far are you willing to get into debt on your credit card or business loan? How far are you willing to go? And this is really something that's going to be unique and individual for every single business owner. I've seen business owners go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt because they felt like once they got to the other side, there was going to be a lot of promise there, and they were willing to pay for payroll even though there wasn't income coming in for a certain period of time. And then I've seen business owners that are like, nope, writing's on the wall, 3 months ahead of time, we need to make these cuts. There's a very, very broad range of which side you want to go on, and there's no right or wrong answer. As a business owner, you need to decide what your risk tolerance is and where you would be comfortable, and also like how you can sleep at night. This is just a tool. It's a tool. It's not the end all be all. I'm not sharing this specific spreadsheet with you guys. I'm sharing, if you want to get the cash flow forecast template, it looks like this. It's blank. There's no value in me giving you this scenario because it's all been customized specifically for this unique situation. So what you need to do is find a tool that can be customized to your business. There's also software for this. So we actually do this in Jirav for our clients because we use Jirav for more dynamic forecasting, and we can pull different levers in a different way there and do multiple scenarios. You can always create one scenario, make copies. If you're doing this in Excel, make copies of the spreadsheet and say, this is the 20% reduction scenario, this is the 50% reduction scenario, this is the complete no revenue scenario, and whatever it is, so that you can get a sense of like what you would do if this, what you would do if that. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Just thinking about what's a possibility, but I would encourage you to think even outside of what's a possibility. What would be like kind of bonkers crazy that you would never actually think could happen? It's not a bad thing to plug it into your spreadsheet and say like, hey, if this did happen, I can have a plan and I kind of know what that would look like. This is all just to help protect you and, again, to help you sleep better at night. And so you can make more informed decisions for your business. And again, if you are overwhelmed by this, your business is too complex, you don't have a plan, and you want to get something in place, please reach out to us at claracfo.com. You can fill out our discovery form, and potentially we could help you with this if you are a business over $1 million. So hopefully this has been helpful to you, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks so much.